I think interpreters sometimes are very humble about their roles or their position in how we're moving global communication across, but it's not an easy thing to be an interpreter. There's a very high cognitive load on the professional interpreter in all circumstances, whether you do remote simultaneous or you're consecutive interpreter, if you're doing on-site or remote interpreting. There's a lot of things going on. And now you add the complexity of having to have some technical expertise, and that's also increasing. The demands on today's interpreter are vastly different than what they were even 10 years ago. And it's accelerating quite quickly. Dieter Runge. So my background is I'm a bit of a traveler, digital traveler, nomad. I was born in California and I raised in Canada, and I now reside in Australia. So I like to move around a little bit.
But why Australia?
Well, my wife is Australian, so of course I listened to my wife, and we had to move to Australia.
Everyone listen to their wives.
It's the best survival strategy that I know. So, but I've moved around a lot in the U.S. I started out in film and television production. That was my early years. Then I completed a graduate program, actually McGill, in Montreal. Mm-hmm. And that was in educational psychology. My interest there actually at the time was in interactivity, because right around that time, interactive CD-ROMs were coming out, and I wanted to learn how people were creating these fantastic interactive products. And working in film and television, I talked to the directors and producers that were producing content for that, and they said, well, how did you get into that? And they were saying, well, we had a background in instructional design, cognitive, science and instructional design, and that's how we got into it. So I'm like, well, I better do that. And it was a great experience. And that is what led me actually into the language world, is that from film and television, I started working in the e-learning space, developing content for, companies like Microsoft and Google and Apple. And we had to ship these products in multiple languages. So as a program manager for e-learning products, I had to coordinate with language service providers across the U.S. to simultaneously ship, Microsoft Office, whatever year it was, 2000 something, 2003, 2004.
So that period, you were working more into localization.
Yeah, localizing e-learning products on technology. So it all kind of blended together, and that actually inched me more and more forward into the language.
Okay, I think you started your studies in film and production, right?
I did. My undergrad was in film and television production. Correct. Yeah.
Is that why you're more interested into interpretation, not translation?
That's an interesting question. I think it is because interpreting is interpersonal in that way, right? There's that component, and especially being involved in the remote interpreting space now, thinking about connecting in language experts in support of language access. That was really kind of where I saw it. I've always felt that technology pushes the possibilities in communication forward in lots of mysterious and wonderful ways. And being a nerd, tech nerd, and being a language nerd, and being a film and television production nerd, it all sort of came together in the language industry. Some sort of role in the language industry world. Worked at a lot of different agencies. And then in 2014 or 2015, that is where I was approached by a colleague of mine who asked me very pointedly, if you could disrupt in one space, where would you do that? And I said, well, lots of people building some really great translation management systems, CAT tools, TM tools. If it was me, I would take a look at the interpreting space. It's ripe for disruption right now. It's a few companies with a few products and interpreters using everything under the sun to try to get their jobs done. And it's quite a mix of things. And I think if there was one way to get everybody using similar tools and get a way for them to work together and more integrated into the translation world, we should try to do that.
That's great. And I'm still wanting to get to know you more and, you know, allow the audiences to actually know more about you. Do you see the interpreting as a job? Do you think, do you see it as part of the production, or it's also a consultant job where it's, you know, targeting specific, you know, industries and so on? Is it an add-on part, or is it something that people can focus on and develop more?
I think it is a very integral component to the evolution of human communication. And I think interpreters sometimes are very humble about their roles or their position in how we're moving global communication across. But it's not an easy thing to be an interpreter. There's a very high cognitive load on the professional interpreter in all circumstances, whether you do remote simultaneous or you're consecutive interpreter, if you're doing on-site or remote interpreting. There's a lot of things going on. And now you add the complexity of having to have some technical expertise, and that's also increasing. You know, the demands on today's interpreter are vastly different than what they were even 10 years ago. And it's accelerating quite quickly. So I think, you know, your question is, you know, what is the role of the interpreter today? It is, at its core, it is to ensure that accurate communication occurs between all parties involved in whatever the conversation is. It is to adhere to you know, a certain code of ethics in terms of how you support those sessions. It is also now becoming guidance and guardrail for the development of large language models and you know, MT solutions, and ensuring that you know, bias and culture and nuance and dialect and concepts across the whole spectrum of language are carefully inserted into, you know, the process of building these large AI-supported communication platforms that are being deployed.
Okay, so since we already talked about, you know, kind of AI now and this disruption and entering the market, I think you looked at it as a way to help the interpreters or the project managers in the field of interpreting, and that's in your product, Boostlingo. Can you talk to us more about the product?
Yeah.
And its since the beginning.
So the platform itself. So we have a number of platforms that we provide to the interpreting community. The interpreting management system serves two really important functions. Number one, we made our tool free to interpreters globally, right? To use it, you simply need to be involved with an agency or organization that uses our technology. There's no charge for interpreters to use Boostlingo. There are requirements. Every agency and every country has expectations in terms of certification and experience to be part of a you know of their organization or of their remote interpreting program. But from our perspective, we wanted to give one familiar pane of glass for interpreters to interact with, so that they can focus on their skills and what they do best, which is interpret, and not worry so much about, you know, how do I use the technology? What, you know, where can I use the technology? We want to make it very ubiquitous so that if you're on your laptop, if you're on a mobile phone, you can connect to the conversation. In interpreting is about immediacy. You don't want to wait. No physician is going to wait an hour for an interpreter to show up. So, and sometimes they have to, and which is not very effective. So, how can we connect linguists to end users and requesters as quickly as possible with the best possible, most stable technology that we can available to us in the market today? That was sort of the concept.
And then from there, you got you created about 4 platforms, right?
That's correct. So we built the interpreting management system, and then we in concert we built the on-demand telephonic OPI and VRI solution to support that. So you could use our platform to schedule interpreters for sessions, appointments, or schedule them for remote sessions as well, or just support the on-demand. Today we have a network of over 18,000 interpreters globally that are all Boostlingo users who are available. They log in from home or from their office or from their maybe from an LSP that they work at. They log in, and within half a second they're connected to whatever session is required for them, whatever interpreting session that they may be required to do. Now, it's also further delineated in terms of specialty, right? So, and this is becoming really much more important for interpreters as well to look at specialization. Is the call about finance? Is it about healthcare? Is it illegal? Is it a high stakes diplomatic conversation? Being prepared and having also tools available to them to ensure that how they can support that call is super important, and not to have to scramble around. Number one, not to have to scramble around and figure out the interface, or scramble around, try to find a glossary or terminology sheet or the instructions for who the end user is, or who, what will be discussed. All of that needs to be at your fingertips. And, as an interpreter, most interpreters walk into situations sometimes it can be very bewildering. You've had almost no prep time, and you've got to jump in hot and do the best job that you can. Yeah. So let's make that as good an experience as possible for the interpreter as we can.
Sure. So one of your platforms, just to put in a nutshell, so one of them is to help interpreters to get access to the market and to be also open to the local markets, because I think what you're saying is if there's an LMS that signs with you,
yes,
the tool will be they'll do their own vetting and then allow their interpreters to get into the network. But then those people can pick up jobs from the other vendors at the same time, because it's a marketplace too, right? Yeah.
So that's essentially right. So we allow any agency, any language service provider or organization that uses our platform to host their own interpreting teams in their platform, and they are firewall away from. They're in that instance of Boostlingo, and they can prioritize those folks for jobs. But if they so desire, they can toggle. There's a very simple button, and they can then roll over to the Boostlingo hub, which is this marketplace that I mentioned, and then have access to those 18,000 interpreters that are there. It is entirely up to the organization. Sometimes in very highly specialized or very data sensitive areas, you have to work with very specific interpreters. You can't open it up to the rest of the world, right?
So it could work as let's say kind of like an on-prem solution for the LSP, and also they can open up their interpreters to the market.
I hesitate using the word on-prem because we are definitely a SaaS platform, right? But yet the analogy kind of sticks. It is very much, you can either, and it's all account based too, right? So an LSP may have hundreds and hundreds of clients who have different requirements in terms of data sovereignty, data security, flexibility on qualifications or certifications on interpreters. you may require in Australia, for example, you may public and government and most hospitals require NAUTI certified interpreter. And so the system allows you to, if you're a NAUTI certified interpreter, it's in your profile. Calls will only route to NAUTI certified interpreters. It will not, if you don't have that certification, the system is, we call it intelligent routing.
Yeah.
Right.
So I here in Saudi, we do have something similar. We call it الترجمة, which is a certified translator. Is there a possibility to also, for us, for example, if I'm an LSP, can I also, create that toggle?
Yep.
And
you could
to make sure.
100%.
Okay, that's good.
Yep.
So I want to move from. So I don't think we covered all the platforms, but I want to know. So we do have Boostlingo for LMSs. And
LSPs,
sorry, LSPs,
yep.
Which is to manage your services and
manage your business and end-to-end administrative. Connect to your accounting program. We also integrate with Zoom and Teams and some of the other conferencing, so you can just bring your own team into a Zoom. It's seamless to the end user and to the interpreter, but we have to accommodate a lot of the large web conferencing tools out there. So
sure. And then you have Boostlingo AI products.
We do. So we have so we have Boostlingo Events, which is our RSI/conference interpreting platform, and then we have AI Pro and we have AI Interpreter, which relatively recent releases, but these are AI tools to support transcription, live transcription, live captioning, and now we have added AI speech-to-speech technologies, leveraging some of the new. We have AI for interactive voice recognition, and AI with rollover. So, I guess the workflow is we have language detection. So, let's say you walk up with a mobile phone or an iPad. You're a police service person or a healthcare worker, frontline healthcare worker. And someone is injured and you don't know what language is being spoken, press the language detection button. Mm-hmm. Once you've detected that, then you can, for the intake or the quick, interactions, maybe you use the AI interpreter to get the gist of what's happened, what the circumstances are. Then you can roll over immediately to a medical interpreter who should theoretically connect. I mean, our ATRs vary between 9 and 13 seconds, but you should always have access to that interpreter within, typically around 10 seconds.
Actually, I've tried the service earlier, and I'm afraid that's going to take my job in the future in a way. But I remember you said that the way you think and the way the services are working is much more directed to actually help the interpreter.
Correct.
To co-pilot the interpreter.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how is that going to be possible?
Well,
what's have been done right now, and where are you going in the future?
There's a couple of things I want to say just for the record, and that is that we've always built our tools with the interpreter at heart. Our motto has been, since we started developing AI tools, has been AI when it fits, human when it counts, and that means that the tools are there to support the interpreter do a better job, not replace the interpreter. There are I know you've heard it over and over again, but there's so many reasons why humans are so essential in the mix because of nuance, because of culture, because the human interpreter can read the room, understand the circumstances. And I never say never on anything, but I think for the foreseeable future, interpreters are going to be so critical to be there to ensure that, you cannot be 90% accurate in a healthcare or legal or finance situation. It just doesn't wash. You have to be 100%. And you cannot ensure that without a human in the mix at this moment. I don't think anybody that makes that claim it's just not. I just don't buy it.
Great. What about the future? How do you feel, and what do you think is going to happen to the interpreters. I do have a small theory in my head about how AI is going to be, playing a role in the realm of interpreters. But I want to hear from you. How do you feel what's gonna happen, and when do you think that interpreters' essential job will change from interpreters being helped by technology to where we are actually helping the technology?
We're already there, right? There are professional linguists now who are helping train models, language models. There are interpreters who are leveraging these tools now to get their jobs done. The future, I mean, I always like to give a message of optimism and it's very cyclical. Like when remote interpreting came out, everybody was up in arms that it was going to eliminate interpreters' jobs. It did the exact reverse. Mm-hmm. What it did is it expanded opportunities for interpreters to connect to jobs, not only locally, but support really interesting things on a global scale, and from your bedroom, if you needed it to be, from your home office, you could connect to jobs as an interpreter. So I don't buy into the fear and loathing that has, that you see and read a lot about these days. Yes, certainly some lower stakes activities are going to be relegated to AI. It's inevitable, but with every technology revolution comes new technical skills that may have to be learned. You need to level up a little bit on some things, but it's going to increase the specializations and the areas that interpreters can go into. So I don't really worry about it that much, and I always try. I speak to a lot of students and early career interpreters who bring this up to me with some frequency, and I just tell them, hey, number one, plug into your network, talk to your peers, see what they're doing, stay, on top of things, get a LinkedIn account, join a language industry association, or join a local discussion group, or stay plugged into your community, find out what's going on, keep abreast of developments, but don't doom scroll yourself into a frenzy. The tools are being designed so that, and there are frameworks in place. In the US, we have the Safe AI Task Force, which has done a remarkable job of providing guidance and a pathway towards the good use of AI for language services, and a framework around making sure that it's used correctly. Europe has done similar things as well, and I think that we can't. The evolution of technology is inevitable. You can either think of it in a good or a bad way, and that will actually shape, your engagement with it and your prosperity in the future. You have to, take it with a grain of salt, but the technology is there to help it at the end of the day. Where do I see, your question was, I guess, what's the future for the interpreter? I think the interpreter will become, if you're an interpreter, don't consider yourself an IT professional. I'm not going to say expert, I'm going to say professional. Then you might have to take a step back and reevaluate what your plan is. We all are, to some extent or another, IT workers these days.
Yeah, in a field or another, we're kind of doing at least 20% or 20% of our roles are related to IT, and at least 20 to 40% of our roles are always related to IT. So I think in the future it's going to be also for interpreting. Part of our work is going to be learning some technologies, helping the technologies, and also to customize those technologies to serve specific purposes. But also you've mentioned that you think that some interpreters, at least I'm not going to say the good ones, but let's say the human ones in general, might find another jobs that is so specific to humans. For example, whenever there's sovereignty in the field or safety, security, things like that, I still think interpreting would be AI interpreting would be great in crisis situation, but it's not going to be the best solution as an AI, like pure machine interpreting is not going to be the best solution, for example, in courts or in hospitals and in important meetings, but they will be dominant in general fields. For example, for all tourists, they can use AI technologies comfortably with great deal of accuracy, if not full accuracy. But then, even though the technologies can serve in like healthcare sector or judicial sector or even let's say political sector, there will be policies or frameworks that actually push for the human just because of the way I would like to say is accountability.
I couldn't agree more. In a lot of ways, I used this term the other day. I think interpreters are going to find themselves as the guardians and stewards of technology, particularly around language and communication, multilingual communication, continue to play that important role. And we'll find opportunities in even more sectors of industry and business as the technology starts to, the crazy thing is that AI really kind of got its start in language, right? Like we were there first.
The first victim is language.
We were there, yeah, exactly. And you know what? We kind of know, sort of how to deal with it. There are other industries and sectors of business that are going to probably not weather the storm as well as we can.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. So now I want to conclude with a question that I've asked all my guests. You being here, Mr. Dieter, in the International Translation Forum. This is, by the way, it's 5th edition.
Yeah.
And this kind of effort have been growing since about 5 years, where the Ministry of Culture, pushing all their efforts to combine academia, industry, students, professionals, all in one yearly or annual kind of gathering.
Yes.
Where they invest a lot of money.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it, and how was your experience so far being here?
I'm going to try really hard not to gush right now because, to use a euphemism, my mind has been blown. I have tapped into a level of energy here in the last 3-4 days that I've been here that I did not honestly expect. I can tell you unequivocally that I am going to be a huge ambassador for ITF when I head back and do my travels. I hit a lot of conferences. A bar has been set here that it really has resonated quite deeply with me. I don't know how to say it another way. And there is a passion and energy for language and culture here that fills my heart. And everybody that I've talked to has been so enthusiastic about it. And I can tell, just traveling around Riyadh a little bit, like how much investment and care has been taken to take this country forward with technology, and with being careful to bring everything else along with it that makes this such a unique and special country. And you just feel it. Like I vibed with it. I don't have another word. Actually, totally vibed with it this whole week.
Well, ITF is vibing.
Yeah. I don't have another word for it. I've had such a good time. I've actually had to dial back all the pictures I sent back to my wife and my son because they've got to he's got to go to school, she's got to go to work, and I'm having such a great time here in Riyadh. So I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good.
Do you think Riyadh is gonna be the translation and interpreting industry capital once they continue these efforts?
I think you guys should try to do that. You think you should go for it. I think you have everything you have the foundations to be the epicenter for it. Absolutely. I really do.
What about, how do you feel about, just being in Saudi Arabia, meeting the Saudis and the people around you?
Yeah.
How was your trip?
I think it's fantastic. I came here really with no expectations, just excitement to travel to a place that I'd not been before, and hearing through the grapevine that there was some strong movements to being a language industry and multilingual technology, forward-thinking thought leadership location. And how do you say? Y'all did not disappoint. Y'all didn't disappoint. It was absolutely amazing to see everybody. Just everybody that I saw. We were part of the tech hub here. Everybody that's come up to me has come up with really good questions and really interested in the technology. And even if it doesn't quite what their area was, they still onboarded it. And it feels a lot like back in 2015 and 16 when the remote interpreting thing was starting to catch on, right? Like that energy's back. So if there was a chance of me being jaded, I'm back. I'm back again. I'm re-energized after this trip.
That's good. So that's great. That's great, Mr. Dieter. I think you've said a lot that about the industry, about technology, how it's going to evolve, how you're utilizing AI now to help the interpreter, but also the interpreter need to be also helping the AI, knowing that in the future their roles will be different and they need to kind of interact with it now, rather than being just afraid, and then see how AI is evolving and try to be just next to it and see how can you support that role, because eventually you will continue to be an interpreter, an expert, and consultant, and a lot of your roles are also going to go to the AI. So we need to be, as interpreters, just vigilant, careful,
and think about. I'm aware now that there are, tech incubator and startup communities here. You don't necessarily need to. There's not just one track forward for the Saudi interpreter language industry person anymore, right? There's these little tech hubs where the job of your dream job might not even exist. You might need to design it yourself.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
How exciting. What a great time to be alive and pursuing a career, I think. And there is a commitment to investment in technology and education, and particularly in language. There's so much opportunity here for anyone that is in the language space. So, I'll try not to be so gushing here, but I see it just walking around the different pavilions here and the conference itself, and just having conversations with everyone here, yourself and all the folks that have been so accommodating and introducing me to what's going on here. And man, I'm thrilled for you all.
Well, I hope you look into SATA, the Saudi Arabia Translators Association.
Absolutely.
Because they might be able. We saw today that they signed memorandum of understanding with a couple of entities. We hope in the future we see you one of the partners of the association and the other businesses here in Saudi. We wish you all the best in developing the technology, but also partnering with us in creating or shaping a new future for interpreters. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well.
Thank you for accepting this invitation. Thank you for being so honest and so open to talk to us about what you've done, what's happening, what do you think is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
يعطيكم ألف عافية. شكرا على المشاهدة. كنت معكم أنا فهد الهذلول في لقاء خاص مع سيد ديتر. سيد ديتر موجود هنا ليقدم شركته بوستلينجو التي تقدم 4 حلول للمترجم الفوري ومدراء مشاريع الترجمة. أتمنى تكون هذه الحلقة مدخل لطيف ظريف يساعدنا نفهم أكثر مقولة أنه المترجم اللي يستخدم التقنية سيكون أفضل من المترجم الذي لا يستخدم التقنية، لكن ما حد قال لنا كيف. لكن أعتقد أن هذه الحلقة مليانة بالنقاط المهمة والمفيدة اللي تعطينا وش الواقع وش اللي صار وش اللي ممكن يصير في المستقبل. بس في نفس الوقت لا ننسى النقطة اللي ذكرها سيد ديتر هنا لما قال ممكن تكون وظيفتك أصلا غير موجودة الآن، وربما تكون أنت قادر على تصميم هذه الوظيفة بنفسك، فأنت محظوظ. فكر في هذه النقطة. كان في ضيافتي سيد ديتر على هامش ملتقى الترجمة الدولي في نسخته الخامسة. نشكر هيئة الأدب والنشر والترجمة على إتاحة هذه الفرصة وتسهيل الوصول لهؤلاء الشركاء، ونتمنى تكون هذه الحلقة عند حسن الظن. شكرا لكم لحسن المتابعة والإنصات، وبإذن الله تعالى نشوفكم في حلقات ثانية. شكرا.